Hillary Clinton is leading in battleground state polling. Her super PAC is pulling local ads in Virginia, Colorado, and Pennsylvania, and they're directing the funds elsewhere. Things are looking so good for Hillary that for the rest of the election, she won't even have to kill anyone else. Trump vs. Hillary starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Allegedly. Welcome to Trump vs. Hillary. And the title of this episode is MVPs and Russians. We will get to both of those topics, but we were trying to figure out music before the show, and Steven came up with something, and I was like, no, Burning Heart from Rocky IV, Survivor. Yeah, that's right. So we're all here in the Burning Heart, and then somebody asked, is it the Burning Heart, B-E-R-N-I-N-G Heart, which of course made Chelsea shed a little tear.
And I said it.
I didn't want to accredit it to one of the other gentlemen in the room. I actually didn't remember. Hey, Drexel's back down at the end of the desk. That's Drexel Heard on Twitter at Drexel Heard. Next to him, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. Next to me, Scott Moore at SMan80. I am Christian DMZ at Christian DMZ. My name's actually Christian Bladt. And look, back on the couch of descent.
Yes, holding it down.
Stephen Helmkamp at Stephen Helmkamp. And
ballsy intro, sir.
I thought you would enjoy that. And we'll talk all about those allegations.
Shocked.
Like Rocky,
Completely shocked.
Victory.
Look, some things are funny.
I mean, I didn't even pay you to say that, so this is not a pay for play.
No, this was not. This was not pay for play.
Ooh,
but
that was nicely played.
Yeah.
It was.
However, future considerations can be brought into this. So as we go through, if you're in the YouTube watching live, go ahead and chat with us, and if we could see some of that up on the screen in here, that's been great the last few shows, so we can see what people are chatting. And we already have some fan feedback from the last show, which we'll get to at the end. But anyway, there's so much to talk about. But let's always get the Twitter plug in at TrumpHillary16. Follow us there, like us on YouTube, comment, rate us on iTunes. All that stuff helps. So there was a big topic earlier in the week. Actually, it was last week. Donald Trump insisted that President Obama and Hillary Clinton were the founders of ISIS, and they were the MVPs. In fact, Trump surrogates made the rounds saying to pretty much every question that was asked them about that, well, as Donald Trump said, they're the founders of ISIS, and you could even consider them the MVPs. I saw an interview with a lawyer from the Trump team on CNN, and he basically said the same thing 3 times and just rearranged the words. So it was interesting. Everybody was trying to help Donald kind of back away from it. Even Hugh Hewitt, conservative talk show host, he bent over backwards to try and help him out. And what did Donald do? No, I meant it. Yeah. He's the founder of ISIS. And the quote is, I do. He was the most valuable player. I give him the most valuable player award. I give it to her, too, by the way, Hillary Clinton. So, again, you hear things like this, and you wonder, Stephen, do you think it helps? Because obviously his base, the diehard, some people call them Trump-a-loompas, would probably already agree with that sentiment. You're not winning anyone over with that, are you? Or are there maybe disenfranchised?
It just makes you question, does he really want to win this election?
Which we've talked about a few different times on this show. Michael Moore, a avowed conservative mind. No, obviously he's a huge lefty, but he just wrote a piece about it. I was reading it this afternoon. He said he's certain that he doesn't want to win, that he thought he wanted to win at one point, and that there's this moment in the it was right at the New Jersey primary when he's like, oh man, he had to give out he went out and gave a speech where it just dawned on him that it wouldn't be fun.
I don't think so,
but I was literally just reading that.
At the end of the day, I think he does want to win it. I just feel like his emotions get the better of him against his campaign advisors saying state a message, and then Hugh Hewitt gives him that out saying, I know what you meant. You meant Obama created a vacuum, and that's where ISIS started.
But Hugh Hewitt was basically saying, here's what your message should be. Go with this. Here's a little lift up over the wall that you had the Mexicans built.
And let's get you out of this hole.
I'm going to help you. And then he's like, oh, no. Let me take this shovel and dig it up.
But I think his hatred for Obama and Hillary, and he thinks that's what's going to win him this election, is pounding them to the ground. it just supersedes.
It may have worked in Rocky IV, just to kind of stick with the theme, So
it just supersedes some of his rhetoric, and it's like, man, you could be way ahead than you are. I mean, he's only down 6 points today, but he could be further along.
I mean, it depends on
maybe
the poll.
in Texas.
No, real clear said the general election.
I mean,
Hillary's up 6.7.
I mean,
points
that's a cumulative. but-
Sure, but that's fine. I mean, it is at the point where, at the very least, the polls ought to be closer.
It's still early.
Yeah,
it's
it's
still
very
early.
early.
No, we're 84 days out, and at this point in the 2012 election,
God, there's still 84 days.
And there's a lot of time left. But at this time, in the last 2 elections, Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, Barack Obama and John McCain were running 2-3 points from each other. Hillary Clinton is down
Double
6
that.
points in Texas right now.
Yeah.
She's up 30 points in New York City.
Yeah,
she's up
New York State.
New York State. New York State.
Trump actually has a lower approval rating in New York City than Bush had when he left office.
She's up 6 to 9 points in Virginia. So we're 84 days out, and like those polls were much closer in the last 2 elections than they were than they are in this one. So 6 points in a general election overall, that's huge.
Yeah,
Although it makes me worried that people are going to sit at home and then we're going to have
Well,
Brexit.
that's
America
kind of
style.
the thing, is that people can understand, that we have this, and
we don't have to do anything. Yeah.
on either side, they might get to a point where they feel that. Stephen, when we were trading emails yesterday, all of us, you had a good point that if Trump just kind of sat out for a week, his numbers would probably go up because
he hurts himself because
he constantly
the
hurts
damage
himself,
is there
though.
for
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton,
Yeah.
and some of the media will jump on it and roll with it, but Trump supersedes that and throws out these ISIS founder comments and the Second Amendment comments, and that takes over the media headlines. But in regards to the polls, during the debates, that's when the polls are going to get real, and we're going to see Hillary Clinton be questioned by hopefully good moderators that aren't friendly to her and put her in positions where she hasn't been in lately
I think
to
good
answer
moderators.
tough
Did you watch the
questions.
2008
I was
debates
gonna
at all?
say,
Did you
compared to
see
Trump
those
doing
at all?
that.
Yeah, but there's way more. There's newer stuff now. I'm saying we haven't seen her in a position to answer from real unfriendly reporters.
How
And that's
many
what we're going
days
to
has
see
it
in the
been
debates.
since she's given a press conference, Stephen?
I mean, I don't know.
You lost track.
200 and well,
She gave a press
a
conference
lot
a
of people
week and a half ago.
say that wasn't a real press conference, and that
So,
was.
so now we're questioning what journalists are.
Got it.
but
I'm
when
not.
it-
A lot of the media
When
is.
it comes to the debates, I hope that they're not friendly to either of them. I don't.
Agreed.
And there was definitely a moment in one of the 2012 debates where what was her name? I shouldn't have made the point if I couldn't remember who she was, but I think it was Candy Crowley. Basically, was like, no, actually, you're wrong, Mitt Romney. This is really what it was, and it turned out she was actually wrong.
They fact check right there in your face.
Yeah,
and I mean that's going to be
so. That's going to be, I don't know, that's going to be the way to do it. And, arguably, Romney actually won one of those debates, but, it didn't matter in the long run. So it'll be interesting to see, how they all shape up. But we've got a month before that.
But that's when the poll numbers really start to matter.
Of course. Well, the poll numbers, but at this point in the campaign, no other presidential candidate has ever come from behind
Clinton's
and won.
ahead. Clearly, no argument about that.
I mean, that's
Clinton's ahead.
fact.
It just depends on if at any point people start caring about these things that Julian Assange literally leaks out.
Yeah, and there's more to come.
Oh, well, obviously he said he has an October surprise.
He's going to wait
And we've never had a wild card candidate like Trump. So
it's different.
him in a debate against Hillary Clinton, anything's possible.
No, I mean, I don't know. I feel
Don't
like
sleep on Gary Johnson either.
I'm pretty much sleeping on Gary.
Gary Johnson is sleeping.
he has to get 15% by mid-September.
In the chat room, Omat Ochan says that Trump is getting crushed in the Electoral College. There is a projection that I wanted to share. It's in my notes for later, but I can find it. The Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, they have a map that shows 347 electoral votes for Clinton, 191 for Trump. You need 270 to win. And it's, states have shifted back and forth, but this is kind of what they've been projecting since March.
Yeah,
So-
Larry Sabato is really great, actually.
we used to have him on Dennis's show all
he's
the
great.
time. He's great. He's a very, he doesn't care what the numbers say. He's just excited by the numbers. And he was very early saying that Obama was going to get reelected when shows like the one I worked on, most of the people who came on were saying that Romney was going to win. And he was just like,
Romney thought he was going to win.
Romney
I think Romney until the day he did. But Larry Sabato's good about keeping it very even-keeled, and he hasn't been very
he's great.
extreme,
Yeah.
and he's left it pretty much like the map was in 2012.
And by the way,
pretty
our
much.
friend Kimberly in the chat room also very excited that Trump is only leading by single digits in Texas.
I feel like we've got a lot of Hillary supporters in there right now.
But it's true in Texas and Utah, in South Carolina, in Missouri, and all these very red states, he's only leading by single digits.
Where's Storage Yard resident? I mean, he should have loved my joke at the beginning.
I'm actually really surprised about the Georgia numbers, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well,
the Georgia numbers are I mean, she's like basically leading in Georgia from a
and
Democrat.
only down by 1 point in South Carolina right now.
So that is terrifying for Republicans who are running for re-election in those states. Right now.
The down ballot is just trying to figure out the best way to navigate. And look, legitimately, there's a lot of unfavorable numbers for Hillary. So there's a lot of figuring out how much you're like, well, I'm voting for him or her. But do I endorse them? Let's see, whether or not.
As long as you vote for her.
Right? Yeah,
the more people are voting for her.
I don't care if you like her.
Yeah,
as opposed to Trump. The more people are voting for her than against.
Talking to me.
So it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough that Trump would say that about being the founder of the proverbial ISIS feast.
I thought we were supposed to bring the comedy, and not the politicians
This is the best part. Yeah. So Trump has also proposed values tests for would-be immigrants, what he calls extreme vetting.
Favorite.
I think vetting for any sort of entry into the country, starting a job, working at AfterBuzz, it's good to have vetting. I don't know what extreme vetting is. It's something like the X Games. That's
supposed to tell about your tolerism. Was that the word?
Tolerance.
Go with it.
Word now.
That's an extreme word from Chelsea Galicia there.
For Western ideals, like LGBT rights and gender equality rights, and I'm thinking to myself, I think half the Republicans are going to have to be shipped out by Trump's extreme vetting process, because I know very many people that are not quite friendly to the LGBTQ community, and the way he's talking, it's like he's been so accepting, and the Republicans and Americans have been so accepting for so long. I don't think he remembers it was just a year ago that our Supreme Court finally made gay marriage legal. So it is funny that this is what he thinks is the test for who should be allowed in.
Well, is he doing that to kind of filter out some people that come from these regions that slaughter gay people and murder gay people, or imprison gay people?
But when you say region, you're also talking about like Israel's in that region. Are they going to kind of keep the Israelis out of America? You're talking about area. You're talking about areas. When you say region, and Donald Trump says region, those regions are all together. And so you can't say, oh, but that person.
I do think that there are a lot of Trump supporters that feel that Obama has not been the friendliest to Israel.
Well, he doesn't like Netanyahu. So I mean, not necessarily. There's a difference in not being friendly.
Certainly lump it all together, though.
Right. But there's a difference in not being friendly with the prime minister and not being a supporter of the people. Like, we are supportive of the Russian people. We just might not like Vladimir Putin. That's just very different. And
speak for yourself. I am not going on the record.
I'm sorry, we're not on vacation with Vladimir Putin's girlfriend right now, so I don't know.
What were you going to say?
In Croatia.
In Croatia, right?
Drexel, wouldn't it be nice if we got along with Russia? I mean, wouldn't that be nice?
I know.
I'm sorry. Have you seen Rocky IV? I can't believe I have to keep going back to Rocky IV. Everybody should watch it for next. I don't know, Scott, but your thoughts on this vetting notion and why he's bringing it up, and if maybe there's more to what he's trying to, are his supporters or potential supporters supposed to read between the lines?
No, exactly. He's pandering to his supporters because, as I was saying off camera, extreme vetting. If you say something enough, you don't have to have any details and all. He really was very thin on details.
Like, we don't know which countries would have to. Is everybody have to submit to these?
Canada, I hope.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And people don't know what the right answer is. Right. Like, this is really going to keep people out.
And I think
there's probably got to be more to it than that, which we don't know because we didn't get the specifics. But I mean, he's probably looking for red flags, where if someone says but
what is a red flag?
Condemns the LGBT community, okay, that's going to be a red flag, or we're going to look into the rest of your questions.
But they come here and then they're going to see so many gay people, and they're gonna be like, oh shoot, I gotta get out of here because this is just.
It's the whole thing is just kind of preposterous,
so
and also
work
you're talking about he was saying what do you do when all the millions of people that come through? What was it? Hundreds of millions of people come through every year, and what do you do to you're gonna make it harder for people to come in? It's already a very difficult process as it is,
and expensive,
and very, very expensive.
This is the problem. Is how many problems are we actually averting at what cost? when, somebody like you who wants to be very fiscally responsible, shouldn't that money go to something that we can actually help? Like, you're more likely, somebody fact check me on this, to be like overdose of heroin in this country than you are to be killed by a terrorist, either
hit by a car.
Right, because you go to the dentist and you get a tooth pulled and you get some OxyContin and then you get addicted and then it gets really expensive, so then you turn to heroin, and 30,000 people a year. That's like a real life problem that we face that should get much more attention and money for treatment and all this, and instead we want to question people about whether they are okay with gay marriage. When half of Americans are not okay with gay marriage.
We can take money from other verticals and apply it to that. Instead of we have to save money in terms of our vetting process, the argument would be, well, we can save money over here or over there and put it towards that. So, but we're seeing like a rise in terrorist attacks, like in our allies, in our own country. People want to feel safe, and a lot of people in America don't feel safe right now.
But because, and as you like to point to a lot, the media, we're seeing a lot
it's not
of
just the media.
images
you look around,
of it.
There's actual attacks, so it's not just the media.
But look at the statistics.
It's homegrown attacks that have been happening here. It has not been from outside.
ISIS is claiming them, and then even the shooters are even claiming ISIS themselves before they.
But there have been more.
Not here.
This is not an international problem, but there have been more attacks on groups of people in America, black people, gay people, than there have been terrorist attacks here in America. So, or what you claim to have terrorist attacks here in America, but they're all domestic terrorists.
Exactly.
This is not. Rudy Giuliani saying, there's no
all the attacks are not radical Islamic. There's been no radical Islamic terrorist attacks in the US.
Since when?
Let's say in the last 3 years.
No. So I think there hasn't.
So
there has not.
Orlando, San Bernardino.
Orlando was not.
Orlando was
not. Boston bombing.
Boston bombing was not.
So radicalized Muslim extremists.
9/11.
That was more than 3 years ago.
Yep. That was
okay. Regardless.
You and Giuliani should talk.
Yeah, you guys are probably getting off the same talking points right now.
I'm just saying there's been a lot.
There's been a lot of attacks, but I think what we're forgetting is that a lot of those kids probably have nothing to do. I was reading a poll the other day or today that said people, they took a poll amongst people who support ISIS overseas or whatever, and none of them have any idea about actual Islam. Like a majority of them they know nothing about Islam. So where Donald Trump wants to talk about people coming in and if they support Sharia law, like a majority of Muslims in this country do not support Sharia law.
That's why
a majority of Muslims around the world do not support Sharia law. So this idea that Donald Trump's going to come in and get extreme value,
a majority don't, but even a small percentage, is hundreds of thousands
but they're not
of
coming
them.
to America.
They're not
in
hundreds
this
of
country.
thousands coming in here.
They're not people out there.
We want to make sure that they don't.
But they have not been a problem.
Right, we
since
already
then.
are.
They have not been a problem. They're not a problem now. They have not been a problem before.
Well, I disagree. I think the attacks in Orlando and a lot of America
that's a
are
U.S. citizen.
I do think it's splitting hairs when people are, whatever their upbringing was, and if they're doing it, we've talked about this. If they do an attack maybe because they're like, well, I'm not a card-carrying member of ISIS or whatever yet, but I'd like to do this, and I'm going to be the one who survives it, and I'm going to impress everybody. So yeah, maybe you're not, it's not sanctioned. Maybe you're not even Islamic, but you could definitely be someone trying to be a part of that movement.
But here's the way that but here's what a lot of those. We're talking just domestic terrorism in general.
Yeah, sure.
We're talking like Columbine, all those kids. If you grow up in an area where people are constantly telling you that you're wrong for something that you believe in, and they're constantly bashing you about that, they're going to prove to you exactly what you're saying. They might not even believe what they're saying. Right. It's like a bully. You've been bullied your whole life, and now you go shoot up a whole school. Those kids don't grow up bullied. Those kids don't grow up to shoot people. Those kids don't grow up thinking, every day they're walking around this school and like, I'm actually going to kill some people because I believe in killing a bunch of people. This kid in Orlando probably didn't grow up thinking, I'm coming to America as a citizen.
No, but he is a citizen.
He's a United States citizen. He did come here to become a United States citizen.
But
just to push that narrative.
To sort of tie it up really quickly,
supporter
the Paris attacks, were those radical Islamic terror? What was that?
Or how about Brussels?
We're sticking to one. Let's just go with one of them. Do you feel like that was? What do you think that was? Because if that's not, then we're calling it the wrong thing.
Extreme vetting in the United States was not
Europe.
I know
either. They have their own issues as open borders. That's a whole other issue.
We're not coming to agreement on what's happened in the United States. So I'm using that one because it seems fairly clear cut that was well organized, well financed. So that attack did not happen here. But people are afraid that it might. And that's the point that we're trying to get.
And the Orlando shooter, wasn't his father either an Al-Qaeda supporter?
But he wasn't the one out there shooting.
He wasn't
the one out there shooting people.
No. But it's in the household, so the Orlando shooter had no
Now you want to
connection.
control what people think?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. Now you're talking about people's parents and everything else.
And that
they're U.S.
If you're being raised in a household and your father is a member of Al-Qaeda or a supporter, I think that's going to influence you a little bit. And then you claim ISIS, and then ISIS claims you.
They did not claim them. Actually, they did not claim them.
Related killing.
They did not claim him.
Enough, we're not going to come to
They did not claim it, by the way. They did not claim it.
We referenced it very briefly, but Trump isn't the only one who is making statements that they probably shouldn't. We referenced it very briefly. Rudy Giuliani talking about how there weren't any, terror attacks on American soil until, he blamed Clinton and Obama, and we know who president was in 2001 when 9/11 happened, and you can certainly attribute some blame to the policies of Bill Clinton's administration, but that doesn't mean that you're just sort of give a pass on that. And it's just odd that the guy who he's best known for 9/11. He really kind of built his, his last 15 years. That's his thing. And look, I was a New Yorker. I didn't live in the city, but I lived in the state at that point. And he was definitely one of those figures that you'd see and you'd hear what he had to say, and you felt good about things. He did a great job in that role even though he was only mayor for really another couple months. But I don't know what's going on with him now, and it's just sort of
he had a short circuit.
Which goes back to last. He did have a short circuit,
Exactly.
And
it was a very long short circuit.
It's a long circuit. It's a long
fuse.
So, and it's not even so much about what Rudy said, but we'll just sort of go around. What do you do if you have somebody that makes that statement, but you're a campaign that isn't in the business of retracting? You just let them keep going with it, I guess. Chelsea, is that what you think that they had to do there?
There's no coming back from that. You're like, sorry, we forgot about those 3,000 people.
No, but it's not even like he's not even talking about that.
He did. He did. To the New York Post or New York Times or something, he said, we speak in abbreviated language.
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes for a speech. You're introducing Trump. I don't get 45 minutes to talk.
Except he got 20 minutes with Jake Tapper, and he kept talking about it on CNN.
So here's what he said. He said, I had a misstep. If I had to go back and redo it again, and future speeches, I'll probably misstep again. That's just the way.
Oh my God! So he's making.
That's what happens.
So he's making excuses then to be able to blame it on.
There was a very
obviously
interesting
he wasn't
take.
denying 9/11.
There was a very interesting. No, there's
it.
other people who do that, but there was an interesting take on that. That him sort of skipping over 9/11 was this tactic to actually get the left to concede that it was a radical Islamic event. Because they don't want to use the phrase radical Islamic terror. So they're like, oh, well, now you've admitted it. So it's sort of like, oh, it's a happy accident, Giuliani not mentioning it.
I wonder what'll happen. Let me just hypothetical.
Sure.
What happens if the Democrats start using radical Islamic terrorism? Like the word. Like what happens to the world? Like, what do Republicans think is going to happen once they start using it?
I mean, they're going to
change everybody's views of something.
No, but as a campaign tactic, you sort of take away a very loud argument.
Right.
So it's like,
power.
So if you say it,
taking the word,
and you're like,
so then why don't they?
That's a great question.
I'm saying, but I think that what we've noticed with a lot of Trump supporters, in particular, and a lot of Republicans over the past few years, is that when they harp on one thing, they will blow it up 10 times. Well, the Democrats think that Muslims are radical Islamic terrorism, and that's all people will hear. That's it, and that is not the case. And I think the President Obama has repeatedly said that these are very different events, and you cannot isolate Muslims because that's what Donald Trump essentially is doing.
I think the argument is the left are saying it's all about gun control. And they're not saying
a lot of this domestic stuff is about gun control.
But I'm saying the right is saying, well, it's more about radical Islamic terrorism. I think that's the
How do
argument.
you put
Right.
together radical Islamic terrorism and gun control in the same thing? They're very different things.
Isn't the right saying these attacks are ISIS based and these
No,
are terrorist attacks?
The attacks
and
in
the
our
left are
country,
saying it's a gun control
the attacks in
problem.
our country with guns are more from our own citizens than they are with radical Islamic
An
terrorism.
argument can
Absolutely.
very easily be made that we need to have guns to keep ourselves safe from these sort of things. It's certainly something I've heard said. Let's move on from that because we spent way too much time on it. Let's go back to where everything goes back to Russia. There's been a lot of interest in Hillary on the internet. We find out all about her emails, and there's a lot of things to look into. But let's talk about how Donald Trump's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, has been named in an investigation by Ukrainian authorities.
Paul Manafort sounds like Rocky when he talks. I don't know. I'm just tying it back into
It
Rocky.
stays with the
But he
theme. I
does-
appreciate
He
that.
talks like this the whole time, and he's in his interviews, and he talks
kinda
like
does.
this.
Yeah,
Just throwing that out there. I don't know if you've ever seen a Paul Manafort
The
interview.
Ukraine's looking into whether he and others received millions in illegal payments from Ukraine's
Not
former
just a
pro-Russian
couple.
ruling party.
12.7 million
Right.
are on this ledger.
No evidence.
Allegations
Yeah.
of
That he
Russian
took it to the bank.
involvement.
That he took a cash payment. There's
So,
no evidence.
Somebody in the chat room wanted to know if you are reading a lot of Breitbart. Because I believe you get a lot of your facts from Breitbart. I agree with Lawrence in that room.
This is so astonishing to me. We see all these.
I read on the Washington Post, I think, that there wasn't any evidence that
not
Paul Manafort took cash payments. Like took it to the bank or cashed it or something.
So he
Doesn't
has.
even
So he
fucking matter
has.
if he
so
has
You
it
know
in his
what?
mattress.
So he has the checks. He just hasn't
You know
cashed
what?
them.
I bet you it was in that same video that Donald Trump saw with the $400 million.
Yeah.
I bet we're missing that. We're missing it in the video.
The real question is, if let's just hypothetically, since we're doing some hypotheticals, if that happened, what does that tell you? Does it tell you anything, Stephen?
I mean,
Any kind of Russian involvement with the guy who just so happens to be heading up Trump's campaign.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I'd rather wait to hear the whole
Sure.
story.
I'm just
See all
that's
the facts
why
come
we're
out.
going to the hypothetical.
But when
go ahead,
there's
Chelsea.
emails that tend to implicate Hillary in something, you seem to be very like, aha, that proves it, right? And then if some evidence tends to show something on the Trump side, you're a little bit slower to
bit
believe
hesitant. Well,
that it's true.
those emails on the Hillary side didn't really tend to anything. I mean, those
They
are
actually
pretty.
didn't tend to
those are
anything.
pretty
They didn't
exact.
tend to anything.
It's like we could.
There was
Well,
nothing.
we saw some of the
there was
emails
nothing.
from Debbie W. talking about going after Bernie. We
No,
saw
you didn't see that in any
some of the
email from
emails
Deborah
actually
Wasserman
were
Schultz.
classified.
What, hold on, wait.
There's
stop. What email-
33,000
hold on, wait,
emails
Now you're no, no, hold on,
deleted.
hold on.
So, in terms of comparing
All right.
that to Paul
You're talking
Manafort's
about-
What I'm
new
talking
allegation,
specifically
it's
is
kind of
about the
abstract.
Clinton Foundation emails with State Department.
Department? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So address that, and then we'll let Drexel
Yeah.
speak.
So it seems
Is that nerve wracking to you at all? Does that raise up any red flags?
on the corruption front, Hillary's corrupt. I think Trump is in a different way corrupt. I knew that going. This is why I was a big Bernie supporter.
This is
But-
why you keep saying you're going to have to drink on election day.
Yes.
Before, during, and after.
So to her aides at the foundation doing what they did in terms
So
of
let's-
pay for play, does that bother you at all?
It,
Wait,
of
they got
course,
what under the table?
pay to play.
No.
For what?
What did who
Exactly.
happened didn't get anything?
Donations came into the Clinton Foundation, therefore the State Department did favors for the donors.
And then Hillary says we don't take a salary from the foundation. So I don't
She
know,
doesn't
but
need
let's
to. She
assume
makes-
hypothetically that
doesn't
you're
She doesn't.
Foundation.
She makes millions.
She makes millions off of her speeches
Right.
and books.
You
She's the
saw that
richest
in the
politician.
returns. They don't get
They don't make money
anything.
off of
They don't
Contention, sorry.
Let's assume hypothetically that she did get something. She leveraged her position and got something for it. Pay to play is going on. I think it's going on all over politics. So now the question is, and I brought this up last week, which administration is the more fertile ground for activists to do something about the corruption?
Gary Johnson.
I think that a Hillary administration, though corrupt as it might be, is going to be a safe, level playing field for activists and others like myself to move that issue forward other ways. If there's a Trump presidency, we're going to be like freaking out about like Roe v. Wade being overturned and going backwards on a lot of things that we've already accomplished. And so that's why I will acknowledge that corruption is likely and still move forward with voting for her, although drunk. I might have to add like high or
Because of
something.
certain issues. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I just think that. Thank you. That was really nice. I think that at a certain point, I wasn't here last week, so I didn't get a chance to chime in on the State Department emails. But, first of all, we know how any business works. There's never.
Do not try.
No. What I'm saying, I'm not. Here's the thing. Now, at one point, and you brought up Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You never saw an email from Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Not one time have we ever seen an email from Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Because they're smart enough to not do it themselves.
I'm saying the hackers. In any of the WikiLeaks stuff, you never saw an email from Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
They're smart enough to not do it themselves.
Okay.
Have their pawns do their dirty
work.
work.
All right. Well, let Drexel finish.
You've
his
also
point.
so you can't say, oh well, Hillary sent or Deborah Wasserman Schultz sent that email, because that's exactly what you said. But at the same time, you also saw Huma Abedin, who also has her own contacts. Her husband was a congressman. She's also got her own contacts.
Let's not talk about her husband.
But I'm saying you've also got these people with
we
their
don't
own
have time.
You talk about Huma Abedin. You've got people that work for Hillary Clinton who've also been around the block. They know everybody. So if any sort of business, like if I work for Universal, so if anybody wants to come to Universal, I'm the first person to be like, hey, come to Universal. Or hey, do you think they have a job at Universal? Because I want to get in. Or I need to get in with this person. Yeah, I'm going to use my job to help people that I know. And in that case, the person who wanted the meeting wanted to give the State Department information that they knew about Lebanon. So it's not about. So I think you people wanting to get FaceTime have information that State Department might actually need. Maybe where they came from, the Clinton Foundation is obviously working with a whole bunch of people. So they're not like. You can't say, oh, I don't want to work with that person because they donated to the campaign, but they have information. So who do I go to because they have the information? Like that's what you're kind of. The field is out there. The Clintons know everybody. You can't go, oh, well, they're pay for play when they're actually just kind of like, hey, I have this information. And that's what you saw in those emails.
Why do I feel like Chelsea's cringing right now?
There's a little bit of that. We are very perceptive. Only because I think to deny that there's been any pay to play. Our politics is dominated.
No, I'm not saying that.
I don't think he's denying that.
I'm not denying that. What I am saying is that if you want any sort of FaceTime with anybody, you're going to have to pay them for FaceTime. That's a given.
No, but I'm saying it's like like you were saying. It's the way you're connected to everybody.
Because you're connected to everybody.
Use that leverage.
I mean, I don't think. I think that it's the same thing. It's the same thing with celebrities. If you want a celebrity to walk your red carpet, or you want a celebrity to come on your TV show, you're going to pay them $5,000, $10,000 to come on that TV show.
Or if you want weapons, just make a donation and you can be sold weapons.
Well, I mean...
Yes, Reagan?
I'm not saying it's right.
And I think to Chelsea's point about Hillary Clinton or the Clinton administration or the Clinton State Department or the Obama administration or the Bush administration, any of these administrations in the past, they're going to have people in their administration that are going to want something for something. Mm-hmm. That's fine. What we are worried about is Donald Trump using his administration to want something from another country like Russia or another country like North Korea or another country that's corrupt in South America, wherever, and worrying about pay to play with the country and less about pay to play with the people. Because a lot of those people that the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, they just want to help the country. And maybe themselves at a certain point, but more the country. Whereas Donald Trump's, as we've seen with Paul Manafort, is going to be focused more on
what?
On
global corruption.
Global level.
Than what can
his
you
self-interest?
Absolutely.
Oh, this is
don't you
interesting.
think
let's move on. Yeah. I'm not sure which one you were going to talk about, but Alexander Hughes' comment. I know I'm in the minority, but I've always adored Hillary Clinton. She is someone I have always admired and rooted for.
You're not in the minority.
Yeah,
you have friends here.
Chelsea is bookended by people who feel that way. But look,
but the whole consumerism is pay to play.
Yeah.
What Lawrence is saying, and capitalism is pay to play. It's just how it works. This is a current strain of American capitalism, but please, I would encourage you to see Robert Reich's documentary Inequality for All, or read his book Capitalism for the Many, Not the Few. That it's not how it has to be, but it's just the way it is here, and so we assume that that's
I'm glad you said watch a documentary, because I'm not going to read that book, but I would watch a documentary.
But it is a good point. It is a very, very
one of the
good
things
point.
that Stephen said, he's waiting for specifics on Hillary Clinton's tax plan and some brackets, but here's the thing, she doesn't kind of need to do that right now. It's basically, she's like the Swedish women's soccer team. She can just line up in front of the goal and no, we don't have to do anything because of what you're talking about with Trump. Specifics are not something that the American people are that interested in right now. They probably will be, at least a little bit, but she can only hurt herself by giving specifics. So it's sort of the same thing, that it's the reverse of what you're saying about Trump. So I can't imagine we're going to see anything like that anytime soon.
I think money in my pocket and money in my personal finances, my portfolio, is probably the biggest issue for me personally, and I think there's a lot of voters that are hurting financially. So this does need to be
sure. I mean,
a
Trump
huge
should,
issue
hang on one second.
priority.
Trump should talk more about that instead of who the founder of ISIS is, because you know, you want to hear it. A lot
His
of people
tax
want to hear it.
brackets are out.
Is it on DonaldTrump.com?
It's not.
Yes, it is.
speech.
And
I remember
he
his
says
speech.
it
You
in
know
You know why
every
it's not
rally.
DonaldTrump.com? Because I always keep notes for myself. And I went to DonaldJTrump.com, DonaldJTrump.com, whatever, and I literally printed out.
DonaldJTrump.com?
DonaldJTrump.com. And I literally printed out what his tax plan is. Now, Hillary Clinton's tax plan, not only is it this short little paragraph right here, but she
For
also
those
has
watching on
has a
camera.
link that says, click here for more. Now, I also printed off the Hillary Clinton tax plan, and there are specifics in there. So
What are the brackets?
That wasn't very green of
Trump's
you.
brackets are what?
Trump's brackets are down to
25,
3.
20,
It's
15?
12, 25, 35, or 10, 20, 30, 10, 20,
think it
25
was
for federal income
25,
tax.
yeah.
So Hillary Clinton's
So
plan.
they're there. So why are you denying
No.
that they're not?
I had to like dig deep in terms of like the stratosphere for that.
Watch a rally and he says it. Watch a speech and he says
all
it.
right, let's not
He's
argue
taking
about
them from
silly
7
things.
brackets
Come
to 3
on.
brackets.
So with the
That's not
Clinton,
even an argument.
with the Clinton plan, there has been no mention of raising taxes on the middle class, even though you like to point out that she made that.
She
gaffe.
said that.
She did.
did not.
She did
She
not
literally
say
said
that. She did
that.
not
She
say
did not
that.
I
say
mean,
She did
I
not
do
say
know that 95% of the increase would go to the top earners, but that other 5%, I think, is going to go to maybe if you're making a couple $100,000 a year, which
50,000
is
plus.
So the bulk of Hillary Clinton's tax plan is to raise that tax on the 1%, or what she likes to call the Buffett rule.
If you're making like over $5 million.
If you're making
she's raising it
over, I
4%.
believe it's the would pay 3/4 of the Clinton's tax plan. She would impose a 4% surcharge on adjusted gross income over $5 million. So the plans are there. You just don't want to look for them.
They're not. But
hold
there's
on a minute.
no plans in terms of if you make $75,000 to $150,000.
But those tax brackets aren't changing.
Chelsea,
they're
what
the
were you gonna say?
They're not going down. They're not going up. They're just they're staying the exact same.
How do we know that?
Because she
We don't
said
see
that.
it.
You know that Trump is
How do we
going to
know
do
that?
you're saying the same thing, that then Trump's going to make this huge change. That's just
What Trump wants to do is clearly there. If you make less than X amount of dollars, you drop down.
But the Clinton,
I know how much I make, how much money I make, and I know under Trump's
So if a
plan, I'm
politician-
dropping 8%.
So if a politician says
that's very
if
clear.
a politician
Why
like
are you
Barack
guys
Ob-
even?
But it's not.
How's
But-
that an argument?
But what you're saying
So
is
you're done, you finish, and then you talk.
Thank you.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that Hillary Clinton has said repeatedly, as has Tim Kaine, as has Barack Obama, the taxes on the middle class aren't going up. That's a given. That's what the campaign has said. Now, whether or not you want to believe her little gaffe or not, whatever.
Capital gains tax is going up. And if
Chelsea,
you're-
what is your point?
Okay. All right. Let's do a little financial history for you. Okay. Let's go back to the Bush days, right? Were
Bush
you-
41 or Bush 43? It's
Three.
important. Okay.
and I don't know 41 as my
Because you're not old like me. I
he
get
did
go
do
ahead.
taxes.
No,
did
go ahead.
Increase
That's all right.
taxes. That was his big
But
thing.
so let's most recent history. Did you like his tax brackets? Did you like the
we're
taxes
talking about
under
Trump
Bush?
versus Hillary. Let's just talk about Trump's.
You know who
plans and
tried the
Hillary's
Trump
plans?
plans?
Okay, so here's
Brownback.
the
Yeah, it doesn't
here's the
work.
thing is and I thanks for not playing along, but even when Republicans controlled the tax brackets and the how much we were paying into, and we had deregulation fantasy land, right? Were Americans feeling rich? Were Americans satisfied with the amount of money that they had? The answer is no. We know that because Americans over-leveraged themselves. They took out second mortgages, lines of credit. They ran up their credit cards, spent amok. Americans were not satisfied then. So the issue in Americans' happiness and feeling that they have enough money is not about taxes. It's about financial fitness, meaning that if you know what to do with any amount of money that you have, you'll be better off than thinking if you just had more.
I think that blames on the housing market for giving out all this cheap money.
The point,
And Americans thinking they can spend and afford more than they really could.
Okay,
So I
but
think the blame is there,
Don't
not on
get
the poor
lost
American.
on a tangent here.
I mean, there could certainly be some blame there, but
Did you not see The Big Short? Ryan Gosling?
Absolutely. I saw it many a
Overrated.
times.
But
Also
anyway,
saw
go
The
ahead.
Apprentice.
Oh, I know. I really
So the
liked
housing
it.
market is the blame for that.
No,
No, there was a lot more to
no.
blame than just the housing market.
Don't get lost in
can't
the
blame
small.
the
I'm
there
being-
can be
but there's a
more.
lot
you're
of
giving me
stuff
cheap money,
that helped the housing
And I can
market get to
continue
that
to
point.
buy and borrow, and that's what I'm being sold, that I can afford a lot more than I really can. That's your lenders. Yeah, shame on me for not being
And
educated
who's
enough.
the regulator that
Right.
allowed
There's
that?
a lot more than the housing market there. It came
In
from a lot
credit
of other
cards
serious
and everything.
auto
Listen,
loans, all those things.
Americans not feeling like they have enough is not about taxes. So if you want to just talk about taxes, fine, and we're using that money inefficiently, that's a conversation that I'll entertain. But all of this, like we need lower tax brackets because I need more money in my pocket, is baloney when you look at what we had just 10 years ago and what happened because of that whole reign of tax and regulation.
Well, I feel like I say it every week, but
It was 10
we're
years
clearly
ago.
right.
How old were you 10
not
years
any
ago?
closer.
I don't want to date
Hey,
myself.
come on.
So,
That's not polite to ask a gentleman his age.
I was a young man, Chelsea.
Yeah, he was a young man. But anyway,
young
look,
man
we're
trying to
not
make
any
a dollar.
closer, but we can continue these conversations in the weeks ahead. That's the beauty of this. There's so much polling stuff that I wanted to talk about. I do want to move on. As I alluded to earlier, the latest battleground state polling is very encouraging for Hillary. And yes, her super PAC is not going to air any local ads in September in Virginia, Colorado, and Pennsylvania. They feel like their money can go some other places like Georgia, just for one, South Carolina.
Texas would be fun to
Texas,
turn.
well,
Arizona.
She's up 6 points. I mean, she's down
She's
6
down
points.
6
Down
points,
6 points.
yeah.
Sorry, she's down 6 points.
So
Six.
it's interesting, and what I thought was interesting was that the polls are starting to kind of go one way, and if anyone in the audience, anyone here in the studio has seen Citizen Kane, when Charles Foster Kane is running for governor, they make 2 covers for the newspaper. There's one that shows that he wins, and the other one says fraud at the polls. So Trump is already starting the fraud at the polls narrative that if he loses Pennsylvania, it'll be stolen from him. Now, I'm not saying it is impossible that a state can be stolen from either side. Obviously, I understand, especially with electronic voting, I'm sure. I'm not saying that it can't be, but I think there's also a chance that you could just lose. You know?
Yes.
It's not necessarily.
And let's get really clear what he's
that's not the way
talking
he
about.
sees it.
Right.
Yeah.
I was
Go
gonna say,
ahead,
you get
Chelsea.
clear on that because I know exactly what you're going to say, and
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%.
So what they're saying is that the fraud, if there is going to be any, is going to come from Philadelphia.
Right, exactly. When he says
Which
Pennsylvania, he
has
means Philadelphia.
It's like 200,000 Muslims, which has a high black population. And, Trump is saying, you got to send people to watch out, make sure people aren't going to vote 5 times because that's a problem.
Exactly.
Read my sarcasm.
Well, I mean, if people are voting 5 times, it is a problem. But you're saying that
But
it's
it's
not
does
happening.
not happen.
because let's
I didn't
look
want it
over-
to seem like you
Right.
don't think it's a problem if people are voting 5 times.
It's not an
You're just
actual
saying it's
real
not
life
actually
problem.
happening.
So,
Yeah.
North Carolina just had, was it North or South Carolina?
It was North.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Just had its voter ID law overturned by the Supreme Court
Right.
because they said it was intentionally racist, basically.
A
It was
Supreme
written-
Court.
It was written in the. It was
Right.
written in the.
A Supreme Court
Yes.
that is currently
When
structured to not vote on anything voted against that.
So, I mean, this was really, it floored me because when I was in law school reading these old cases about these racist laws that had to be overturned by the Supreme Court, I was like, oh my God, thank God we no longer live in that America. And then these are real life current cases. It boggles my mind. But so this whole voter ID
It's
thing.
voter intimidation with the
Pennsylvania
monitoring.
had its own similar voter ID law overturned in 2012 because it's not a real life problem that's actually happening.
No.
So
and
this
it's a state that
like
has
less than
gone
1%,
Democratic at the
less than
presidential level
1%.
since 1988. So the last time it actually went Republican was in '84.
But I also love that Donald Trump.
He's not even close there.
Donald Trump, who always talks about polls and always loves the
Right.
polls. Currently,
Well, he used to like the
He used to
polls.
like the polls when he was up.
In July.
He's now saying, well, the poll, he doesn't like the polls.
polls are
right now.
fixed.
Well, no,
polls
they're
are
fixed and
They're
rigged
fixed
and-
and they're
right.
rigged, and so he only likes it when he's winning, and that is the Republican mantra.
Well, my favorite quote about all of this from Trump was, can you imagine how badly I'll feel if I spend all that money, all of this energy, all of this time, and lost? I will never, ever forgive the people of Connecticut, he said. I will never forgive the people of Florida and Pennsylvania and Ohio. But I love them anyway.
That was so funny.
Oh, I mean, it's hysterical. But at the same time, you're just like, what?
I think his reasoning behind saying that is, look, I don't need to do this. I'm a billionaire. I got a great life. I love doing deals. I love doing this. I don't have to be here. Meaning, I don't have a power trip agenda. Maybe like the Clinton does.
Power trip.
Well, we only have a few more minutes. There's two things I want to talk about. The first is we have a couple people from Florida here. There's polling that shows that Hillary is up by 9 in Florida. Stephen, are you surprised? And I know it's just polls, there's a lot of time, but for right now, that snapshot, that poll, are you surprised to see that she would be up by 9 in Florida? Or
that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Rubio came and endorsed Trump too, right? When did he endorse?
He did endorse Trump, but he's only up by 3 right now in his campaign right now against Patrick Murphy. But their primary is not
Patrick Murphy is up by 1.
Yeah, there's another one that says, but it's very close.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the polls are all entertaining and fun, but I really think on the debates, after the debates, and once the first one goes off, then you're really going to start.
Does this mean you're not going to be here until we have a debate?
No.
You think Trump is going to be great at the debate?
I don't think polls are that serious as they're going to be.
Since we're almost out of time,
the closer it gets, the more important they're going to be. But right now, they're still very important at this point.
The final thing I need to address before we go is, I made the joke at the top, but there is this story that runs kind of rampant, especially through conservative memes and things, that Hillary Clinton's a murderer. And a lot of the, Snopes just glanced into this, and a lot of these come from a website called whatdoesitmean.com. And they cite a lot of security agencies that find this. They cite Russian media. There's somebody that they said that Hillary Clinton had killed who's actually still alive. And they're sort of trivializing some, Seth, whose last name I forget. But Seth Rich is a DNC staffer, and they're sort of trivializing it for political gain. So I think it's worth making light of, not because people are dying, but because people just always go to well, she's a murderer. And if there's evidence that she's a murderer, then we'll definitely see it in October. But when it's these sort of sources, there's not really that much we can do about it. And that's why we talk about the validity of the sources. Anyway, We're out of time, so we're going to have to get to so much more next week. But speaking of next week, we will be here Wednesday next week at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern, so make sure to find us then. Follow us on Twitter at TrumpHillary16. For the voice of dissent on the couch, Stephen Helmkamp.
Hey, and I've got a YouTube comment from one of our viewers, Christian Cribbs. It was very long and well written out. He put a lot of time and effort into it. I'm going to pick out the highlights of it and read it on next week's show.
Okay, we'll get to it next week. Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard. Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. Scott Moore at SMan80. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. And we will see you next week on Trump versus Hillary.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.